This is Abnormal Entertainment.
2, 3, 4. Walked into the tunnel just to find the light. Hunted for old demons, looking for a fight. Looked up at the stars, seemed to go forever. There must be a way, it all fits together. Fell into the quicksand, held on to the vines. Never could quite color, stay within the lines. Feels like I have wings, I can fly wherever. This is just a way, it all fits together. Finally saw the world through rose-colored glasses. Gonna share my journey to small and large masses. Give up on my life, no sir, me never. This is how I put it together. This is how I put it together. This is how I put it together.
Hey everybody, this is Daniel Garza, and welcome to another episode of Put It Together. I'd like to start as usual thanking my producer, Mr. Kevin Moyers, for all his help and support. Thank you, sir. Inviting all of you to check us out at abnormalentertainment.com, where you can find all the shows on the network. This morning, I am excited. I'm here at Chris Sanders' house. Hi, good morning.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm all right.
I was greeted very affectionately by your pup this morning. Hilo?
Hilo, yeah.
Hilo?
Hilo, the call sign of the character Carl Agathon from Battlestar Galactica.
Okay. I have to go back and watch him. I'm sure when my boyfriend hears about that, he'll be excited.
Yeah.
He's a Battlestar Galactica fan too.
You haven't seen the newer ones from?
No.
Oh my God, it's some of the best. It's Edward James Olmos at his best, and the acting all across the board is like, it's just so good. And it's some of the before Netflix and binge-worthy streaming services were a thing. It's some of the most binge-worthy TV ever made.
I will make sure to put that on my. I'm about to cut my cable. So.
Oh man, do it. We've been
and go cable free
since we moved to LA. Cut cable. Since I got into the TV film industry, I don't really watch any TV.
Which is odd. Yeah. What do you think? Well, I first saw you, and I'm thinking back of how I started to stalk you. Follow you. I think I saw you in a commercial. And then I was like, who is this dude? Because that's how I find people. I watch them on something. I'm like, who is this? And why has nobody talked to them? And then I follow you. And then we ended up having a mutual friend, Savan, who's actually, if I'm correct, the president of your fan club. Is that
self-proclaimed? And I think he invented the fan club when he made that comment on Facebook.
Okay.
At that moment, yeah.
Okay, cool. So it's a new club.
Yeah.
All right. So we want to show a shout out to Savan if you want to send him a message.
Yeah. What's up, Savan? Just trying to live my best life. We got to work together at Comic-Con last year, and it was one of the most fun experiences I've had in the entertainment industry. Everyone on it was one of the only projects I've worked on where everyone on it was just so fun and so interesting. Almost any project you work on, there's at least one person that everyone's like, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
But just everyone was so fun and so engaged with each other and interested in each other's stories, and then still wanted to hang out afterwards.
That's pretty cool.
And we actually did. And everybody's scattered all over the LA area. It's not that easy. You can work with someone for a week on something, but if they live in WeHo and you're in NoHo, probably not going to see you again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I live in Laguna Beach, and whenever I work on projects, everybody's up here. But it is interesting that there are certain projects where people you just look for each other, and you follow each other. The good thing about social media is you can keep track of people and where they are, what they're doing.
Yeah.
So let's get started because I feel like there's a whole lot of story to you. So Chris Sanders, tell us how you put it together.
I guess I'll start as a child when I first realized what I wanted to do with my life, which was to entertain people. Or it started as wanting to get as many people to laugh at one. 12, I think. So this would have been, I was born in 82, so this would have been early 90s. I was in, I think somewhere in Massachusetts, because that's where my mom is from, and every summer she would drive me, my brother and sister out there to visit our Nana and then a couple of aunts and uncles that were out there. And somebody had a boat and we were tubing, and someone also had an old camcorder and was filming the whole thing. And my brother was getting on the tube for his turn to go. And as the boat was starting to gain speed and take the slack out of the line on the tube, I hilariously made a pop culture reference and said to my brother, Tom, you don't know this, but the tube is not attached to the boat. Smile, you're on candid camera. And everybody lost it because Candid Camera was a big known TV show at the time. And at the moment I said it, I recognized that people laughed, but I wasn't self-aware enough, I guess, in the moment to realize what I did and how I did it.
Right.
And it was later, either that night or a few days later during that vacation, we were watching the tape that the person who had the camcorder was recording it. And that moment happened again, and everyone in the room watching the tape laughed again at the same thing that happened. And that's when I was watching it from the outside. That's when I suddenly realized, like, oh, I've known I could make people laugh, or I would often get people to laugh, but it was seeing me doing it suddenly taught me, or I suddenly realized how I could do it, that I can control it. And that changed I had, up to that point, I never wanted to be like the firefighter, astronaut, that type of stuff. I loved animals more than anything, and I wanted to be a zoologist or a marine biologist. However, I used to have terrible motion sickness. Like, I threw up on the Maid of the Mist, which is the boat at Niagara Falls that just takes you on the calmest water possible by the falls. I'd throw up after like 20 minutes in the car. So probably wasn't a great idea to pursue that. So thankfully I realized I can make people laugh. And then that just kind of drove me into, like, in high school, going for the drama class and the plays and stuff well before anyone expected you to. Like, as a freshman or sophomore, you're not in my high school. No one would give you the time of day. You're not supposed to go out for any of the plays. But right. As a freshman, I got a part in one of the plays and then got into drama class sophomore year instead of junior year, like everybody does it. That made me start an improv group at my high school that I believe still exists.
Wow.
I think they even do, like, state competitions and stuff. And then I started going to college, auditioned for the theater department at Western Michigan University, didn't get it. I auditioned for an improv team, the biggest improv team at Western, and didn't get it because one of the douchey college guys that was already on it, he was the only one that just didn't like me, and it had to be a unanimous decision. And then the Army recruiter called at the right time while I was depressed and not getting the first few steps into my burgeoning entertainment career, and I joined the Army.
So before we get into the Army stories, so really from the time you were a kid to the time in the Army, there was no plan B. You were going to be an entertainer. That was...
No, there were thoughts, but I've had a lot of jobs. I'm from rural Michigan, from a lower middle class family that I didn't get money for college. I had to buy my first car. I had to start paying for my own haircuts and school clothes when I was 13. Because that's when, I think it was 13, I had my first job, which was corn detasseling, that's, the top of corn stalks, there's the tassels, and that's where all the seeds are. So this is jobs that now probably immigrants do, but in the 90s, high school kids would do them, high school or middle school kids. You meet up at like early, like 5 or 6 a.m. They take you out to a random cornfield. And then if the corn is short enough, you walk through the rows, and every 4 rows have to have the tassels pulled off because those are the females. And then the male rows keep the tassels on, and it's to propagate the field.
Wow.
And you just.
There you go, folks. Not only are we getting an interview, we're getting a little bit of agricultural knowledge here.
Rural.
So you are original Children of the Corn.
Yes, I am. And it made it even worse because that's like when Children of the Corn was out. So like I would watch that. I saw that for the first time, and like scary movies don't get me anymore, but that was fucking frightening to see Children of the Corn and then have to like have your mom like, get up, we gotta go pick corn.
Yeah, so there you go, folks. If you ever wondered if Children of the Corn is real, Chris Sanders is one of the original.
But then after that, I started, I got paid under the table, working too young as like a busboy at the local bar. And I worked there all the way till I was 18 and served as well. I worked at a glass shop installing glass, like windshields and stuff. I was a lot boy at a RV sales and rental place, so I did all like clean the RVs and trailers and then fill propane tanks.
So to say that you know the word hustle is an understatement. You've been hustling at it just to not to survive, but to move forward since you were a kid.
I never thought of it as a hustle because I wasn't hustling for anything. It was just, that was what you had to do. It's not like when I was getting closer to driving age, there was no like, there was no carrot dangling in front of me of, we have all this money saved to get you your first car. It was, if you want a car, you need to work for it. So get yourself a job. Or like my mom saying like, you're old enough to have a job now, so I'm not buying your school clothes anymore. So figure it out. And that's not like she was saying that because she was being selfish and hoarding her money. She didn't have that much, but she didn't have enough money. So she had to make the decision of like, I can't just keep, I can either use money to pay for the mortgage or I can use it to pay for your school clothes, but you're old enough to work. So might as well work.
That's interesting because I guess, the different perspectives. I was a kid helping like the neighbors with their yard a little stereotypical there, but yes, I grew up in Dallas in Texas, but I would babysit for my sister, her kid, or go help.
And you got paid for it?
Yeah. Or go help somebody with chores and just so I can get money.
What size did you get an allowance too?
No.
Oh, yeah. That was the only like doing things like that, like mowing the lawn or even mowing the neighbor's lawn. Those were outside of the realm of, those were just favors to do for people.
Yeah,
or they were included in like the allowance, which I think at most was $5.
Yeah. No,
the week.
I had chores that I had to do during the week. There were things that were assigned to me. You do them, you get paid. Like it's a job and you work, you get paid. You don't do it, you're not going to get paid. But it was like all or nothing in my house. So you either did it or you didn't. And it's like, oh crap. But I've always been a brown noser, overachiever kid. So I always did more than I had to. So yeah. But, this is about me. So the Army, why the Army?
That's the recruiter that called. I had no intention of I wasn't even thinking about the military. Like in, your junior, senior year of high school is when, recruiters will show up sometimes during like lunch hour and try to talk to people. And I never did. I'd never, cause it was, like I said before, my goal was like, I was going to go to college, be in a theater program, study, and then move to either coast to then go from there. And when I did, I was going to Western Michigan University and just doing like gen ed courses for my first semester, and then auditioned for the theater program, didn't get in. And then same thing with the improv team, and didn't get into that. That was crushing it. And it was more crushing than it should have been. Like, I wasn't seasoned enough yet to know that there's going to be way more no's than there are yeses. So I maybe took it a little too personally, because at the same time, I was also getting cast in shows at the Kalamazoo Civic Auditorium, the big theater in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which is Kalamazoo's the largest city near where I went to high school, which is Schoolcraft. It's only like 15 minutes north of there.
Okay.
So I was like doing professional theater work while not getting placed in the Western Michigan theater program. But that's plenty of people, your first audition, you don't get in, and it's in your second or even third year that you finally get in. But it literally was a day or two later, after being denied the theater program and that improv team, that I was at my dad's place. I was in the living room, laying on the couch, eating a regular sized bag of potato chips, getting fatter because I was a larger kid in high school. And he was outside mowing the lawn. And I remember thinking, I should go help him. Nah. But like MTV Spring Break or some stupid shit was on. And right then the phone rang. I answered. It's the recruiter. And I'd gotten those calls before, and I normally just hang up. But that little voice in my head was like, listen to what he has to say. Because he said, do you need money for college? And I was like, I do. Because again, I was paying college on my own. Any money I had saved in any of those jobs I had from 13 on went to my first car, which was like $300 and had only 2 tires and a lot of other problems. I paid for my own high school trip to France with the French class, and then only had a little bit left over to barely pay for the first semester of college. I had nothing after that. So I'm sitting there while on the couch eating chips, getting fatter, watching MTV. I was thinking about how I have no money for the next semester, and I don't know how I'm going to do this. And then there's this phone call of you need money for college? Yeah, right. And this is, keep in mind too, this call was in the fall of 2000.
Oh, wow.
So this is pre 9/11. This is legitimate peacetime, booming everything's pretty good. So there was no thought of, it's the Army, but nothing's really going to happen, so no big deal. So recruiter came over, talked to him a bit. We started going through the whole process of going to a MEP station, which I forget what that acronym stands for, but I did all the testing. You have to do an aptitude test, and it's basically a dumbed down SAT that I scored almost perfect on, which they then take that score and they sit you in front of I think they call them career counselors. They paint it Jesus so it sounds better than it is, whose job is to put you where the military needs you, not where you want to be. Right. But they try to sugarcoat it so that, and ask you questions about what you want to do to make it seem like you're making the choice of what you want to do. So I had no idea what I was getting into. And he asked, you scored about as high as you can score on this. What job do you want to do? And I was like, I want to fly helicopters. And at the time I still had glasses and pretty bad vision. And he said, you can't fly unless you have uncorrected 20/20 vision. And I thought, that makes sense. I found out much later that's a total lie. You can fly with corrected 20/20 vision. And he said, what else do you want to do? I said, okay, if I can't fly helicopters, I want to drive tanks. And he said, but you're too big. I'm 6'4". And he said, you don't fit in a tank. It's pretty cramped in there. And again, total lie, but I was like, makes sense. I don't know. I have no reference for this. So then he said, anything else? I was like, I don't know. And he said, you scored really high. How about military intelligence? And I was like, I don't know. That sounds like a desk job. And that's kind of not, I don't want to get out of school to just go do more school. Really? He's like, yeah, you're right. Total desk job. You don't want to do that. And he, no shit, did like he's about to tell a racist joke, looked both ways over his shoulders and leaned in and was like, how about 11 X-ray? And that's just the nomenclature for the MOS. And I was like, that sounds pretty hip with the X-ray. And I was like, what is that? He's like, infantry. He's like, do you know what the infantry is? I was like, I don't. He's like, oh, do you like hiking? And I was like, yes, I do. Do you like to go camping? And I was like, yeah, we go. My dad has a motorhome and we go like every weekend in the summer. Do you like to blow stuff up? I never have, but I'm pretty sure I would love to.
I'm a dude, of course.
I'm pretty sure I'd like to. And then he's like, well, the infantry's for you. And he put in this DVD that was straight up. It was like just women in bikinis and in piles of cash, short of being the most over the top recruiting video ever. It was just like rock music, random explosions, and then what seemed to be soldiers doing things that you never actually do in the real military, like ridiculous running through buildings and clearing rooms in a really weird way that is not tactical at all, like guys rappelling off of buildings but doing it like Aussie style, which is where you face forward and like walk down the wall and then stopping halfway, pulling out his M16 rifle and one-handed just shooting it wildly. But it's all stuff that like a barely 18-year-old kid who doesn't have money for college and hears things like, you like blowing stuff up, you see that, and you're like, oh, I'm so hard right now. Yes. Let's please go.
I'm not questioning anything.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then I just kind of like blindly signed up for the infantry. And I mean, after doing it, I don't regret doing it. It was, I think a lot of people that join the military in general don't know what they're getting into. But especially combat arms don't know what you're getting into. And you see in combat arms, there's kind of, you only get the extremes. You don't get, there's no one really in the middle. In combat arms, especially in the infantry, you get some of the dumbest people that there are that are great soldiers because they don't know how to think for themselves. And then you get the most intelligent individual people that like are so self-aware, and they are some of the greatest soldiers ever because they know how to lead.
Right.
And those people.
So you have the perfect balance of both things. So how long were you in the Army?
It ended up being 4.5 years. Whenever you sign up for the military now, after Vietnam, when they stopped the draft, the way to keep it so we don't need a draft and it makes more sense is anytime you sign up for the military, whether you're going reserves or active, you sign a contract. You are obligated to 8 years. However you serve that 8 years is up to you. So like I signed a contract where I had 4 years active duty and then it'd be 4 years on inactive reserves.
Got it.
And it's so that after that 4 years of active duty, I would get my honorable discharge if I was a decent enough soldier. And then that 4 years afterwards, if anything were to happen where they suddenly need a bunch of troops again, they call back those people that are within that window because you're much closer to, you already know what to do.
Right.
And they don't have to just draft some random civilian, train them up, and then expect them to fight a war. So it ended up being 4.5 because we were in Afghanistan, when my original ETS date, end of term in service, came up, which was January of 05. Cause I started basic training January 3rd of 2001. Oh. So in January of 05, we were in Afghanistan. So I had to wait till we got back, which was in, like mid-May. And then I just had like 2 months of just out processing and then I was done.
Without getting too much into it, because it would be a total different show, but having been in the military through 9/11, is there a significance for you? Did it change your perspective on the world, or?
Did 9/11 change my perspective on the world?
I mean, being in the military, because as a civilian, we see it one way, but.
Yeah, I guess I've not thought about that. Or, I mean, did your perspective change on the world?
Somewhat. I became a little more reserved because I used to fly a lot and travel a lot before 9/11. I still do. I wasn't scared. I was just more, I was more aware of my surroundings. But I was 31. I was about to turn 31 in 9/11. So
I don't know. I was so, the indoctrination process into the military, what they do to you in basic training and then your advanced individual training for your job, and then that continuing training once you're in your actual unit, especially in combat arms, is dangerously effective. You are completely, your brain is literally rewired, especially as in infantry or other combat arms. I mean, infantry, your job is to fight and win wars. That's it. When you're not actually fighting in a war, you are training to fight in a war and kill people. So I remember when it happened, really there was maybe a handful of people out of my entire company, which was 120, 30 people, maybe a handful, like 5 that were like a little shaken, but the rest of us, it was just kind of it was weird. Right. It was like this, it didn't seem real, but nobody was like shaken. Everybody was just kind of like, yeah, that's the world we live in. And then it even motivated people to like really want to get over to wherever we need to go to kill these assholes that did it.
Yeah, because I have several friends who have been in the military in different branches, and I tend to ask that question for people who were in the military during that time, like, being in the military at that time, does it change your perspective? But almost everybody has the same answer. It's like, you're so wired in a different way. Yeah. But thank you for your service.
Well, and it's still, you were worth it. It still affects you kind of forever. I'm sure you could rewire again to change to change how you think, but it makes you just so, a lot of people will probably feel like, a lot of people often meet me and the first time they meet me, they think I'm a huge asshole. And I'm not. I'm a really nice, jovial, generally person. However, if we are, emotions don't infuse into my thought processes, especially if it's an objective thing we're talking about or doing. I keep subjectivity out of it. And that generally comes across as just being cold. Yeah. When it's not cold, it's efficient. And that's what military training does, is it makes you as efficient as you can possibly be. It also makes efficiency and inefficiency really one of your biggest pet peeves. Like, few things really make me lose it, but if there is a problem with an immediate solution and no one is doing anything about it, I can't stand it. And it's because of that.
And I have some really close friends, best buds, my bros, and most of them have been in some form of military training. And I think that's why I follow them, because I was raised that way. It's like, here's the problem, here's the solution, just do it. Like, don't ask, just do it. And so we're like in that way. I almost joined the Army. Yeah? I almost joined the Army when I was 18. And this is right before Desert Storm.
So this would have been before Don't Ask, Don't Tell too, right?
Yeah. And the only reason I didn't join was because I was afraid of being outed or my sexuality.
That's so bullshit.
And the recruiter came to my house and we sat there and talked. He was hot, by the way, but he was this big old muscly black guy, and I was like, for you, I will join. What do you want me to do to you? But through the questioning, he was getting very close to like, why don't you want to join? And I finally said, I'm not going to do it. I won't do it. And I didn't go. But, and then when Desert Storm came, I cried. I was so upset with myself. I was so desperate to want to do something, and I didn't know what to do. And my parents were like, what's wrong with you? And my parents didn't follow the news that much, and I was like, this is going on, and I was going to join him. I was like, what, are you crazy? I was like, by then they knew I was gay, and I was like, if it wasn't for my sexuality, I would be there right now. Like, I would be there. And to this day, I tell people, if I could go to a training, I just want to go to a training. Like, put me through training just so I can, like, feel like I did my part somehow.
Right.
So we'll do a show about that one day. Anyway, back to you. So you get out of the military, and then what?
Well, I had the first couple years in, it seemed like I thought I was losing my, sense of humor or my, ability to entertain. And that's just because you're, as a newer soldier and in the lower ranks as just like a private and PFC and even specialist before I, became a sergeant, you're just not allowed to voice your opinion
Right.
just about ever. But the longer you're in, you make friends, and as long as you do your job, you can still be somewhat of an individual. So after about 2 years, I started kind of finding myself again and realizing that the Army wasn't going to be a career, and there's still so much more I needed to try. So I did after my initial contract, I should get out. So I think it was while I was in Afghanistan, one of the letters I got from my dad and stepmom was that a comedy club owner who had a club in Battle Creek for years, and Battle Creek's like 25, 30 minutes away from the Kalamazoo area, had opened a club in Kalamazoo. So I started having this fantasy of like, oh, I'm going to get out of the Army. I'm going to move back there. I'm going to get a job like just, like bussing or cleaning or something. One night I'll be sweeping off the stage and the mic will accidentally still be on, and I'll just start talking to it. And then they'll be like, get this kid a job. And it actually worked out. It was like serendipity worked its way in. And when I was home, on leave after Afghanistan, I got a couple weeks to go back. Myself, I think it was like my brother and his girlfriend, now wife at the time, went, maybe a couple other family members, but we went and watched the show. The headliner was fantastic. I thought it was hilarious. And afterwards I went to the bar area where he was sitting, and I started talking to him and telling him I had just got out of the Army and comedy is something I want to try or do. And we chatted a bunch, and then he said something about how the owner, Gary, was a Vietnam vet and he loves veterans and everything. And when Gary came out, he just grabbed him and introduced me, and we chatted for a few minutes, and Gary was like, I stopped doing amateur nights like 20 years ago. But I don't know why. If you want to come back next week, and I can give you 5 minutes to try it out. And I was like, oh, of course. I had never done legitimate stand-up yet. The only material I had was what I thought was a solid half hour in the notebook, which was only about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So he just said, call the club, on like Thursday or something, and we'll see if we can get you in. That week, Thursday, whatever it was, I called, his son answered, who was like, I don't remember any of this happening, but it does sound like something my dad might do. So he got his dad on the phone. He even said that, I don't remember this conversation, but it probably happened. Sure. Why don't you come in on Friday? So I came back. Once he saw me face to face, he then remembered me. He gave me 5 minutes at the first show and said, if it goes well, I'll give you 10 minutes at the second show tonight.
Wow.
So I did 5 minutes. I don't remember seeing the audience. I don't remember laughs. I just remember lights, me being super nervous because it's just a completely different vulnerability doing a solo stand-up performance than doing something on camera. And walked back in the green room, and he walked back after introducing the next comic, and he was shaking his head like no at me. And I was like, oh, I knew I fucked up. And he said, I've never seen anyone their first time on stage do something like that. And I was like, yep, here it comes. And he's like, you're going to be the next Jay Leno. That was so great. And they gave me 10 minutes at the next show. He comped like 30 people like friends and family that were there to just watch. And then he gave me the job of being his house MC
Nice.
which ended up being about a year before I moved to Chicago. I got back after that leave and that initial like attempt at stand up. I went back to Hawaii, out process, and then was out by, it was like the beginning of August of 2005. So I spent that year, August 2005 to August 2006 in Kalamazoo, Michigan, house emceeing for him. And then also I started taking classes at Second City in Chicago. So every Sunday I would drive 3 hours, take my 3-hour class, and then drive back.
Wow.
And after a year of that, I was like, this is stupid. I should just live in Chicago. But the other serendipitous thing that happened that made me choose Chicago first over either coast was, again, while I was in Afghanistan, my stepdad at the time was a music teacher at an elementary school in Kalamazoo. One of the teachers he worked with, the second grade teacher, her class wrote me letters and wrapped them around full-size Hershey bars. So I got like 30-some full-size Hershey bars with cute letters from children wrapped around them. So I was pretty popular for a few days. And then I wrote them back. And then when I got back, she asked if I would come talk to the class, which I did. I did not know it at the time. But several weeks later, after visiting class, I get this random call. I was walking into a restaurant with some family, and I answer, and it's, hey, is this Chris Sanders? Yeah, this is him. Hey, it's Keegan-Michael Key from Mad TV. And because this was back when he was on just Mad TV. So this second grade teacher happened to be the sister-in-law of Keegan-Michael Key, and had told him that this guy we wrote, he was in the war. He wrote back, visited the class. I know he wants to be in entertainment somehow, and just told him if he wanted to call me or something, say hi, which he did. And then he also offered, cause he happened to be visiting in Kalamazoo with his wife at the time, his sister-in-law. And he's like, hey, I'm at my sister-in-law's for the next, like this week. If you want to come just hang out and we can like talk shop and stuff.
That's
so
awesome.
For like, it was a solid like it was like a half a day. I went and hung out with him and some of his family. And he just gave me the ins and outs of what he knew at the time. So this was well before Key and Peele and everything he does now. But still, for me, he was huge. Like he was on Mad TV.
Mad TV to me was, yeah.
And he did the same, he did the similar, path that a lot of Mad TV or SNL people did, which was going through like Second City, cause he started at Second City in Detroit. And then through Chicago and everything too. And he gave me the advice of like, you could move to either coast right away, but it's good to cut your teeth first, like train. And Chicago is still even now, Chicago is, in my opinion, the best place to cut your teeth.
And as the longer we've talked, I remember now where I saw you, like that you stuck out for me. Didn't you do one of those, comedy competition shows things? Oh my God. My boyfriend loves to switch through channels, and we were watching one of those where like 3 people were like battling each other. Didn't you do one of those?
A televised one?
Yeah.
No.
Then where did I see you? Cause I stalked you from somewhere, and I saw you on TV first.
Well, you saw the FanDuel commercial. I know that. That's the John Morways thing. With the giant beard and.
Yeah. Is that where I saw you then?
Possibly.
Okay.
That was the biggest thing that's been on TV the most.
Cause at some point all you white people look alike. So
yeah,
it could be that. Especially from Michigan. I like Michigan though. So, I do like Michigan. I've been to, Sagatuck, Traverse City, and Davidson.
Like the gayest places.
Yes.
In Michigan. Yeah.
Well, that's where they send us to train. And the Dunes up in Traverse City because it's the northern part, and then Davidson because they have great markets there. So yeah, of course, great candles. They are pretty gay. So I'm trying to think more, but yeah, that's probably where I saw you from. Because I like to do the Who is the Guy on website.
Yeah.
For those of you that are listening and are watching, there's a website where you can go and Who is the Guy, and it tells you who is the people in the commercial. And if they're pretty popular, it'll give you the name, and you can start following them too.
Oh, that's cool.
So I think that's where I got you from.
Possibly,
okay,
yeah.
I'm gonna go back and trace my. I should really take better notes, but I don't. Wow. So then, at what point do you decide? Okay, it's time to make the West Coast.
So yeah, so there's even more that happened. So, well, one thing that like I greatly regret, not the time with Keegan-Michael Key, but my actions afterwards, because he was so genuine and so nice, and I mean, he was so easy to talk to. He complimented me, not knowing me at all, not knowing even that if I'm talented or not, but he said nice things like I just got, there's something about you. I got a really good feeling. Like, you're going to do some big stuff. And I was like, oh, great. Thank you. But I mean, he even offered like if you're going to go to Chicago, if you're going to move there, or even if you're just going to go there and like try it out, he offered his condo that him and his wife still had there he had other people renting it, but he's like, there's a room, and if you want it, like, just let me know. I never took him up on that. I was so intimidated afterwards, like, he didn't really mean that. He couldn't possibly, he's a big star. He couldn't possibly like want to give me access to his condo to live in. And I'm sure I would have paid him rent, but either way, I didn't follow up after that. I just didn't, I've probably always been kind of too modest or too humble, really detrimental only to me, because it just sometimes keeps, if you're not, just, be aggressive.
Yeah.
In a good way. Just know I'm not toxically masculine. I'm just masculine. I should have followed him up on it, and I didn't. And then years later, my mom ran into him she was going to a movie in Kalamazoo, and she recognized he was sitting in a chair, kind of sunk low. And this was when Key and Peele was out. She stopped and just said, "Hey, you're Keegan-Michael Key, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And she was like, "I don't know if you remember, but years ago, my son got back from Afghanistan, and you called him and hung out with him for a little bit, and like convinced him to try Chicago first." And he said he didn't remember, but sounds like something he would do. So, thanks. I guarantee, like, it's totally one of those things that if I were ever able to be in the same room with him again, pretty sure he'd remember. And
you do have a memorable face.
I really just wish I would have followed up. But anyways, yeah, I moved to Chicago.
Well, if he's listening now for some reason,
right,
and I'll make sure to tag him on this somehow.
Kept doing Second City's program all the way through audition, and did the conservatory all the way through. Was in a couple of different like sketch groups and improv groups during that time. Was dabbling in stand up as well, doing open mics. Even did a little bit of a like Midwest comedy club tour with a like stand up agency that sent me a few places. No great places at that time, but still, I'm like, I look at that as like my college education in the entertainment world. After, I'd been in Chicago I got there in August of 2006, had a job in the corporate world for about 6 months, and then was like, I can't do this. It doesn't leave me any time to potentially audition or do anything in the entertainment world. So I looked for a job at a bar. I ended up getting hired and working at Hydrate, one of the biggest gay clubs in Chicago, as head of security and bar backing for 2.5 years. Wonderful job and wonderful experience. Like, rarely had to break up fights. And even when I did, they weren't, throw down drag outs. It was.
I can't believe you just said drag outs at a gay bar.
Yeah. There's plenty of drag outs. And it's just it was such a nicer community than working at a straight bar. Like, generally everyone looks out for each other, even the patrons. Someone it's easy to pick an outsider who probably doesn't belong because everyone lets you know.
We are pretty gay.
But yeah, but it was a fun job. And while doing that, I then got this chance meeting with a theater company called Catharsis Productions that had just gotten a large contract with the military to start doing performances for the Army specifically. And they were looking for current veterans to come just kind of talk to them, vet their script, talk to their current actors, to kind of give them an idea of what their audiences would be like in the military, and make sure that everyone kind of started to get an understanding of like military jargon and stuff so that they could come off as, if not having served themselves, at least like they know the lingo and they can be on the same level. And that I read the script. It was hilarious. And what makes it better is that they don't just do shows. Catharsis Productions uses comedy as the educational tool to break down barriers to deal with really tough subjects. So they do sexual violence prevention education and interpersonal violence prevention education using comedy as the educational tool, and it works. They've been around since 2000 is when they first wrote their show, and for many years it was just the two creators, and then it just blew up. And now their programs are part of every single new soldier in the Army, every new sailor in the Navy, all get Catharsis Productions programming as part of their catalog of programming for like resiliency and interpersonal violence prevention.
Oh, wow.
And I was part of them from end of 2008 or beginning of 2009 to May of 2016. So for 7 years, I had, really the dream job in the entertainment world. I got to travel. I did shows in all 50 states and like 9 countries. I was on the road 9 months out of the year every year, making good money, like enough to pay the bills and put some away.
Nice.
Which is any actor's dream job.
Yeah.
Like, I even one point a few years in, I remember taking my box of headshots and resumes and tossing it in the dumpster, like, won't need these anymore. This is the last job I'll ever need. And it was neat too, because it's partially improvised, and they did and do a really good job of continually adapting what is scripted to keep it fresh, not just for the audience, but for the performers as well, so that, limit burnout. Because I ended up I stopped counting at 1,000 shows, but did well over 1,000 shows. And eventually, after 7 years, I started getting burnt out. But the burnout wasn't so much the performance, it was the subject matter. You're doing sexual violence prevention. We're not like trained psychologists. We have a lot of training in that field, but being one of those people that you're a lot of times the first person who a survivor has ever heard something like "it's not your fault" from, and they immediately want to talk to you about it.
Right.
So you get a lot of like vicarious trauma dealing with stuff like that. And then it also opens up your eyes to all of the people in your own world who you never knew, but were also survivors, but they just didn't say anything because of how taboo it is. So that 7 years of that, that was, with it being mostly improvised, and you were doing it's either a 2-person or some of the shows are just you. And with a stand-up background, that gave me thousands of hours of stage time of just working on all of the tools that are needed to be an entertainer. And cool. I get a lot of people out here in LA, a lot of actors have like regrets about when they moved out here or when they started pursuing this, that almost everybody wishes they could have started a few years earlier. And I understand that, but I'm kind of glad I didn't. Had I not been in the Army, had I not had 7 years with Catharsis Productions, I would be a very different person. I'm not saying I would be an evil person, but I don't know that I'd be as progressive as I am.
That's pretty cool.
I'd very likely be a pretty stereotypical douchey bro. Had I not had that like enlightenment. I mean, even working at Hydrate too. I was raised in rural Michigan. Like, I think there was one black person at my school in the entire 4 years that I was in high school. And there were definitely gay people there, but no one knew it.
Right.
So, I mean, without that, I don't, again, not that I would be this like awful, outwardly homophobic person, but
it would have been good.
Right. It'd be different. Cause I used to be what I think a lot of people are, is like passively aggressively homophobic.
Well, this is a good segue because we're almost 10 minutes to the end of the show.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Usually at this point, I ask my guests to share some words of wisdom with my listeners. So, Chris Sanders, what words of wisdom do you have?
Geez, in just general, just words of wisdom.
You've already shared a lot, so.
I mean, it's cliche to say like, follow your dreams. But kind of that, like, follow your dreams, and I mean, no one's going to do it for you. And even when you do follow your dreams, no one's going to give a shit that you're following your dreams. No one's going to give a shit about any part of your life. Like, you have to give a shit for any of it to work. And with the invention of social media, it's just made it worse, where all we ever really want is just validation. But before social media, where we got that validation from generally ourselves, and once in a while from other people who are like, "Yeah, you were great today," and whatever aspect of your life that is, like, just be undeniable in whatever you're gonna do. Even it doesn't have to be in entertainment. Like, I know there's people out there that fucking love teeth, and like they want to be a dental hygienist more than anything. Like, so great, be undeniable with that. Like, don't wait on other people to tell you how great you are at cleaning teeth. Just clean some fucking teeth.
Well, that's one thing that's kept this show. We talked about that when I first got here. Like, I've been doing this show for 7 years now. I took some time off during my cancer time, but it's what kept me going. And one of the best advice that I got when I started was, do the show for you. Interview people that you want to talk to. And then when you're interested, other people will be interested.
Yeah.
And that's what I've done. I only go after people that I'm curious about, like, what keeps you together? How do you do it?
And I'm learning that too, even though it in almost any acting class now you take, you're generally told, like, and De Niro, I think, there's like a YouTube video of him saying this too in some interview, that like most actors just do too much. They try too hard. I'm like, really you don't need to try. Just be you, be your most authentic self. And I think I'm finally starting to realize that when I'm putting it into practice, because that's it's not that the breakdown that the writer or whoever, producer or even casting director wrote about the character. We're not trying to like force, this person doesn't exist. Yeah. We're just looking to find someone who already does exist, who roughly fits into that. Yeah. And very likely there is somebody that does. And if you are trying to force yourself into that, that doesn't work. You just come in as yourself. Yeah. And generally that's going to work a lot better. It totally does work, because what it comes across as confidence, not arrogance. And it feels, when you're doing it, it feels like you don't give a shit. Yeah. But you give the most shits. And there's something charming about not giving a shit. Cause to me, it shows, it's that confidence of like, I can do this in my sleep.
Yeah. That's worked for me in my auditions. And now that I'm starting to do stand up, it works in my stand up. because I was trying to force these characters, and I had a show last week and blanked and just went off on my own stupidity and just, I messed up people and everybody just went along with me on this little ride. Yeah. And it was one of the best things that I've ever done in my book. Okay, so next question before we end. In the book of Chris Sanders, what would be the first sentence?
Jesus Christ, how can you ask these questions without any sort of like pre-interview?
Well, that's with a point. Otherwise, you prepare it. It's not prepared.
Well, yeah, but I guess I'm a bad improviser. Maybe that's the first sentence in the book. I guess I'm a bad improviser. That's too heavy.
And if you could name this episode, what would you name it?
Not as heavy, but Jesus, Daniel. What the heck? Not as heavy, but Jesus, Daniel.
And we're coming down to the end. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
There's so much more that we need to get into, but I think for a put it together story, you have one of the most impressive put it together stories.
Out of 248?
Yeah, there's people that, like, by the time we get to where they were, it's like a very short, like, I was born, I grew up, here I am. And I was like, okay, cool. But
I've done a lot in a short amount of time.
You have this really amazing.
I have to keep reminding myself that someone a couple years ago, within my first year in LA, a commercial I was working on, I was chatting with a production person, and we ended up talking for like an hour, and we both were talking about all these different things we had done, not in the real world, just in our lives. And at one point, she just stopped and said, like, how old are you? And I was, at the time, I think 35. I was like 35, and she's like, you've done a lot. Yeah. Have you realized? And I had stopped, like, I just keep going. I don't dwell on the past a lot. I just let it automatically influence my, whatever I'm doing now, instead of thinking back like my life is not an episode of This Is Us. It's just, it happens. There's no flashbacks to that moment I had with my dad that now influences this decision. It's just the decision. Yeah, yeah, I know. And
I'm putting the pieces together, like me picking this shirt to wear today, which you guys will see it in the picture, wearing a Star Wars t-shirt, and then you talk about your Star Wars puzzle. Yeah. Which this was in my car, and I had a couple of shirts in my car that I carry around for just in case.
Do you live in your car, Daniel?
I do. I'm one of those people. I guess I don't actually live in Laguna Beach. I live on the beach, and I have a place in Laguna Beach. But because I'm always traveling between Laguna and LA, there's always t-shirts and socks and stuff in the car for just in case. And last night, as I was grabbing a shirt to shower this morning, because I did shower this morning.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. I grabbed this shirt. I said, I'll wear this one tomorrow. And so there. But there are people that I'm very intrigued by, and I really don't know why, but I'm like, I want to hear their story. Like, I know that there's more than what we see on camera or what's online. Like, there's all this hidden, and you've definitely surprised me. I've been able to, in my life and through the show, go back, because sometimes people ask me or they interview me, and I have to go back and, when I was 10, when I was 12, and I'm like, crap, you have done a lot of cars. I'm like, you've done a lot of shit. But I'm 48, and then I meet somebody like you, and I'm like, wow, like we're like if this is you now, I can't imagine how much more you're gonna do. And I'm glad that we've had this time.
Yeah, I am too. This is really nice.
That I can visit. That I can follow you more now without stalking you necessarily. So not gonna be obvious about it. For everybody listening out there, first of all, thank you again, Savan, because we'll give you the credit for hooking us up. He's the mutual friend. I guess he's the Chris Sanders president
President of the Chris Sanders Fan Club.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll give him that honorary title. I feel like I need to send him
Not only is he's the president, he's the only member.
Well, I'll send him my membership.
All right, cool.
Yes. Definitely, I'm a fan now. Not just professionally, but personally. You motivated me. So
Sweet.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
For everybody listening, thank you to my producer, Mr. Kevin Moyers, for all his help and support. Thank you, sir. Follow us on abnormalentertainment.com. Go check it out. Sign up for all the shows. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Go check me out, Daniel G. Garza. See what we're doing. Remember, there are other stuff there on YouTube. Other than the videos, we have the Better You workshop. We're just started the Put It Together conversations with life coach Tommy. Go check out that first episode. Plus, stay tuned. We'll hopefully post more of the stand-up stuff that we're doing. And if you like it, comment on it so I can share it to the producers and maybe get more shows. So who knows? For now, Chris Sanders, I feel like I can come back and do a whole other episode with you and have more stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I talk a lot.
You do. And that's good.
And I go on tangents.
But it all made sense today.
Sure.
Plus, I brought you with some sweetbread. So
you did.
To be able to. That's
been sitting in front of me the whole time, and I only ate one.
So now, as I leave, you can eat the rest.
Yeah, I'm going to.
It's all for you.
Yeah.
For everybody, thank you so much. Thank you, Chris, again.
Thank you.
Time.
This was really great.
This is Daniel Garza saying, hey, put it together.
This is how I put it together. This is how I put it together. This is how I put it together.
Subscribe to Put It Together on iTunes, Stitcher, and at abnormalentertainment.com/putittogether. Find Put It Together on Facebook and tweet Daniel at Lil Messican, LILMESICAN. And for more podcasts, comics, books, movies, and more, head to abnormalentertainment.com.
You've been listening to the Abnormal Entertainment Network.